How much money are we talking about the Bears spending, knowing that there's a floor that they have to get to here?
So if we're just looking at free agency, I would guess they spend about $100 million in first-year cash on external free agents. So before we even get into bringing back their own guys, and before we get into, maybe extensions for Cole Kmet, Darnell Mooney, Jalen Johnson, what have you, I think they are going to be probably the biggest spender in the NFL in free agency. And like I said, that the cash is what matters again. So first-year cash flow would be in those signing bonuses, maybe in some of those first-year roster bonuses. Ryan Poles has said, and he's smart and he's correct, that free agency is not for splurging and trying to fix your entire roster and go make big moves. But I do think they will probably make one or two splashes and then look to add, kind of like Jacksonville, and then add a bunch of mid-tier, solid players around that as well.
What were the things that Jacksonville did that you think are comparable to what the Bears did?
Yeah, so they went after the offensive line. They gave Brandon Sheriff, the guard, at that time, the biggest guard contract in the NFL. Probably not something I would advocate for, just both in terms of doing that, in free agency and also the player. A very long-time good player, but has shown injury concerns the last couple of years and was frankly not very good this year for Jacksonville. But, I think offensive line and defensive line, I don't think I'm breaking any news here, is the key for them. And it's not a great free agency class overall, but I do think there are, we've heard the name Daron Payne in Washington. I think Javon Hargrave in Philadelphia is a very intriguing option as well, a little bit older, but that's not really a concern for me. Go watch him in the Super Bowl. He dominated against the Niners as well. And then on the offensive line, you're going to hear about, Mike McGlinchey, the right tackle in San Francisco, Caleb McGarry, the right tackle for the Atlanta Falcons, and I think Jawan Taylor with the Jacksonville Jaguars, also a very good young right tackle. So those are the spots. If I'm going to make a splash, that's where it would be.
Where are the hidden advantages in re-signing and or extending your own guys? In the NBA, we hear about bird rights and some of the exceptions, the multiple exceptions that you get to incentivize players remaining on the same team. Do those still exist in the NFL?
So there's not like CBA mandated or written advantages. I think the advantage just comes from when you're giving a guy an early extension. Let's say Darnell Mooney, just as a hypothetical. Look, he's a former fifth-round pick. His earnings to date are not that large. And, if he reaches the open market, he might be a franchise tag candidate. Let's ignore that. Let's say, he plays out his fourth year. For whatever reason, the Bears let him walk. Odds are he's going to sign a larger contract than if they extend him this offseason and say, look, it's a little bit below the value, but you don't risk injuries. You obviously got hurt this year, so that's a legitimate risk. And maybe you get a slight discount on the contract. Just to throw out an example, we were talking about the Vikings earlier. Stephon Diggs and Danielle Hunter both got extended after their third year. Hunter was a third-rounder. Diggs was also a fifth-round receiver. And their deals became some of the best value deals in the entire NFL in a matter of one or two seasons, because they took that discount to get some, bird in the hand, more than two in the bush. And then the deal aged very favorably from the team's perspective.
Who are the teams, Brad, that you think do an excellent job of managing the difference between cash and cap?
So there is a small part of it that has to do with just which owner, frankly, is willing to spend more money. But I've always thought the Bears do not have an issue there. I know there's been some perception from my perspective that they're willing to spend if they think they can win. But that being said, the Philadelphia Eagles are where they are for a reason. I think they have the best front office in the NFL. And in particular, Howie Roseman, the general manager, came up through the cap office. He was the football administration guy. That's where the cap nerds all, reside. And they have a very robust department there. They have more people working in that capacity than any other team. So they're on the list. I think Baltimore Ravens are very good about it as well. The Niners are pretty smart in getting deals done early for the most part. Buffalo recently with their new regime has been really proactive. You look at Josh Allen, Tre'Davious White, Deion Dawkins, Matt Milano, all guys they do early. And immediately, a couple of years later, everyone's passing them. That's probably the biggest advantage you can have is just, taking care of your players early. You reward them and they reward you by playing really well and probably above the level of their contract.
Just out of curiosity, if you were running a team, Brad, and you were putting together a cap department, how would you divide some of the specific intellectual skills between CPA, MBA, lawyer, and all of the above. Like when we talk about the way certain minds process information, or maybe just a pure football guy, or maybe an agent. I'm just wondering, what would be an ideal mix of intellectual histories?
I think it's a great question. I do think, maybe I'm biased here, I think a lawyer is necessary. A lot of these contracts, it's also not just about the dollar value, but is the writing going to protect the team? Is the language in the contract favorable towards the club? And again, not ripping players off or anything, but just making sure you're protected, making sure you can do things and have, the flexibility to kind of control the contract how you want to. I think Philadelphia is another great example in that capacity. But then also, yes, it is accounting. It's basic, simple accounting. So you probably do want, a CPA or something of that nature in the room. And then I love the last part you touched on. I would have a pro scout who is working hand in hand with the football administration department to get a really, really good idea of what is the available talent coming up on the market in free agency. What is their market going to look like because of a certain scheme fit, or does this position get paid more because, let's say, it's an outside receiver versus slot receiver, or they're a corner but they're 6 feet tall, so they'll get paid more than a guy who's 5'10". Like, bring the football component in, but then tie it to dollar value. So I think those as a big three is how I would formulate it at the top.